Well, it was a hell of a Thursday to be in New York. I started my morning walking outside the door of my hotel to see that the Knicks parade preparations were underway. Finished later in the evening by coming into the town and getting the aftermath of that with a little sort of cocktail of Mexican fans thrown in there too. But in between, I was actually out in Queens meeting Tommy Smyth with a Y, an Irishman who came to America in the early 1960s. He was a teenager. He did all sorts of odd jobs. He worked in a hotel down here in Manhattan as a electrician's assistant, works as a travel agent. He worked in a trucking company, all sorts of jobs over the years. But in the early 1990s, he started to appear on ESPN as one of the voices of their football coverage, coming up to USA 94 as the ESPN got the international rights to cover the game. And it sort of went from there, a completely unlikely story. And Tommy Smyth was someone who may not be all that well known in Ireland, is an Irishman who's probably broadcast to a bigger audience all over the world than probably any Irish broadcaster of his generation, because ESPN was so big in Africa. It was so big in all the countries that they had the rights to commentate for, and then eventually America, and he ended up as a regular presence on American television eventually through the 90s, through the 2000s. An incredible success story. I was out in his house in Queens, walked down the steps to where he still records a 3-hour show with Sirius XFM 2 days a week. He's doing a little bit more with the World Cup between him and Rodney Marsh. And yeah, it's from Knockbridge. I went out to catch up with his story. Looking ahead, I suppose, in some ways, I mean, USA heading into action again on Friday. And here's an Irishman who I guess his own story represents the American dream.
Yeah, so it's two loud men out here in Queens. And I will say, Tommy, you left in, 1963. I live an hour down the road, for the last 20 plus years, and you've got more of a loud accent than I do, which I don't know what that says about me or our respective characters, but here we are. I've just been listening to you do your show for the last 3 hours downstairs. America's been good to you.
America's been very good to me, but I like to think that, I was good to America too. Like I always tell when the Americans say, yeah, but you came here, and I always tell them I had shoes on, I had a suit on, and I was educated. Didn't come here as a naked baby and then have to depend on the system. So I came here prepared from Knockbridge, and when you live in Knockbridge, you're prepared for New York.
Yeah. Well, I said to some people I was coming out to meet you, and at home, and it is like a reference point. Tommy Smyth, and they were like, oh yeah, did you know the guy like with the onion bag? And straight away, people at home were like, oh yeah, because that is your catchphrase. I heard you downstairs, you managed to use it at one point during the show.
Certainly made no mistake as he buried it in the corner of the old onion bag. What a bulge in the old onion bag that was.
But that's one of your lines, right?
Yeah, that's my line. And, people say, where did that come from? Well, I had a very good friend here, Barry McCormick, who's from Navan. And Barry owned a restaurant downtown. And when I started to get into television, he had me down for dinner one night and he said, every American announcer has a catchphrase. He said, you need a catchphrase. And we were talking about it. And we went downstairs to do something. And as we went down the stairs, there was bags of onion. And at that time, the nets used to be red. And there I saw the onion sticking out of the bag. And I said to McCormick, look at that onion sticking out of the bag. I said, doesn't it look like a ball when it hits the net? And he said, you're right. And I said, I think we'll go with that, a bulge in the old onion bag. And that's where it came from. And I couldn't believe it. I was listening to the Inniskeen game against Clontiberate in the Monaghan final last year on Clubber. And this guy said, oh, there's a bulge in the old onion bag. And I'm on Twitter the other night, and there's some guys in Drogheda, and they were trying to explain from my own county, they were trying to explain where the onion bag came from, and they never gave me any plaudits at all.
You should have got a trademark or something like that. That's probably the issue.
Yeah,
so we have just been looking at this here, because Tommy's wife, Trassa, put this together, I think, for your 60th birthday, and it's like, people will see now, sort of some of the pages I'm flicking through that, like this is a sort of a story of your life. And here's the thing, like for a lot of people, you come onto the radar in the early 90s as a football commentator. But I say for a lot of people, it's for a lot of people in Africa. It's a lot of people around the world as opposed to in America, because you've been explaining that it was ESPN went international, and you were working as a painter at the time, having done, what, 17 different jobs, you said?
That's right.
Over the years
Yeah.
in all sorts of industries. And basically you go in and what happens next?
Well, ESPN hired me, and they were just launching their international broadcast centre, which was going to deal mostly with soccer. And it was in 163 countries in the world. And the first game I got was a Brazilian game in the Paulista League, Guarani against Santos. And there were, if you were listening to the game that night, there were two guys. There was a Dan and a Tom. And if you're listening to the game that night, you would say, those two guys are going to win the World Cup for Brazil. Because anytime I had a doubt as to who had the ball, the name I couldn't pronounce, it was Dan or Tom, one or the other. And that's the way I started. And the rest is a bit of history.
Got Dan and Tom here as
Yeah,
well.
there
Here.
you go.
I like
That's
the symmetry
exactly, yeah,
you've got going on.
that's-
But you, I mean, the thing is, and you know, you explained, like you did sort of all sorts of different work in different industries when you came over here, but you were doing sort of nixers, casual work. You did have your own radio show. You covered the Pope's visit for a radio show for Larry King.
Right, that's right.
Eamon Coughlin's
Yeah,
World Mile.
Right,
So
for
you,
RTE.
so you had experience.
Yeah, I had a
But
bit
you
of-
still managed to basically talk them into giving you a role, because you said it was to do with the 1994 World Cup, and all of a sudden there was
Yeah.
opportunities opening up, and they needed someone who
knew what the game
knew
was
the
about.
game.
Yeah, I learned the game in Oriel Park going back many, many years ago. And, you know, the show still is on the air. It's called Ireland Calls. And I'm glad that when I went on television, my wife Tressa from Cove, she took over the show, and she has it on every Saturday night now. It's Ireland Calls. And it's been on there since 1967 or maybe 8. I missed showband music when I was young fella. I was only a young fella when I came here. I was 17 years old, and I decided that I'd get a show, and I went out and I what they call barter time. I bought it and I sold out advertising, and that's how I became known on the air. Plus, then when I played with Louth in Gaelic Park, which I did for 4 generations, I actually started broadcasting the games in Gaelic Park. They had this tradition.
Sorry,
of
that was a
broadcasting the
big
games.
opening for you
Yeah,
as well.
that was the big opening. Yeah, that I got so much experience there, because people in America, everybody asks you, where do you go to college? Where do you go to college? And I do always say, oh, I went to Gaelic College. And they say, Gaelic College? Yeah. I said, it's in the Bronx. And then I do finish it off, it's Gaelic Park, because that was my college education. You know, I stood in the press box there every Sunday, and guys around you, and guys giving you false names and everything else. You never knew who was playing, and you're trying to figure the games out. And it was the best education I could have ever gotten.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, like, sort of 6-7 years after you walk into the door at ESPN, you know, you'd never worked as a full-time broadcaster. All of a sudden, you're in Munich commentating on a Champions League final with Alex Ferguson as your co-commentator.
Yeah, that happened. You know, I was getting another job. The other job didn't come through. ESPN signed the contract for the Champions League. If I had taken the other job, I would never have gotten that job. And that night it was the Bayern Munich grounds, I think it was, yeah. Alex Ferguson was the man who was my co-commentator. There were 2 of us, but I also had the story of where I was walking around the ground and Juventus were actually training, and the ball kept going over and they had nobody to get it. So Marcello Lippi said to me, excuse me, could you get us the ball? Here I was, a lad from Knockbridge, playing the ball to Del Piero and Vieira and all those lads that played with Juventus. So you know, I've been very lucky. The man above is taking care of me. No question about it.
Yeah, because then that started off with this long relationship covering Champions League finals, covering World Cups. But as I sort of mentioned earlier, you were hugely well known in Africa. You went to the South African World Cup in 2010. I think you said you met the great Jimmy McGee, another loud man.
Yeah.
And that was when he realised that you had a little bit of a following.
Following. Yeah, because I did this thing, the Onion Bag, which was 55 seconds, and ESPN had no advertising in Africa, so they would play this continuously. I remember one night counting 19 times in 2 hours, I saw myself on television in South Africa doing this 55 seconds, where I would pick something that happened in soccer that week, and I would have a go at it. And Jimmy McGee, I was in Darwin, and I went out into one of those shopping centres or the food markets, and the crowd started following me, and Jimmy put a nickname on me. He said, "You're the Pied Piper of Knockbridge." That's what he said. And the greatest story about Jimmy, an awful lot of people don't know, Jimmy was actually born here in Long Island. Jimmy was a New Yorker. His parents I knew very well, and Jimmy went to Ireland and became a commentator, and I left Louth and came to New York and became a commentator. Talk about two worlds that didn't collide, but they were right.
Wow. And you're still doing it. This is the thing. I've just been downstairs to just explain to people, like, you've done a 3-hour show just now with Rodney Marsh in Florida. We had Paul Oakenfold on as a guest.
Yeah.
You've got callers coming in, messages coming in from Wisconsin and Dallas and Orlando.
Israel has gone, and Czechia and South Africa have drawn the game 1 apiece. So they're still alive. They're not going to go home before the postcards just yet. It's 1 apiece and the end of this one.
I mean, you're still very active. Like, I'm not, you're past your 80th birthday. You're in good health. You're still.
Am I?
Yeah, I think so.
God.
You just showed me a sheet over there of all the radio interviews and stuff you're still doing out here for various stations. Like, I mean, there's a nice symmetry here. Like, this World Cup in '94 was your breakthrough in some ways, or it was a trigger for your breakthrough. And here we are now the World Cup in America in 2026, and you're still doing
going
it.
strong.
All you have to do is go SiriusXM.com shoutline to get your takes in, or you can call us at 87762.
And but the interest seems like it's grown. You've seen it. Like for the people back home, just to know maybe the difference in the interest levels and knowledge in the sport now compared to the early 90s. I'm guessing it's a different world.
Oh, it's completely different. I mean, if you look when the US played Paraguay last week, I mean, there were 80,000 people in Los Angeles that game, and yet there was a watch party in Kansas City, where Arrowhead Stadium is one of the stadiums. There was 50,000 people at the watch party, which is absolutely incredible numbers. I mean, the amount of kids, we have one of the finest parks in the country is up here, and we have a soccer team up there. You can go up there on Tuesday night or Thursday night, and you will find between 500 and 1,000 kids between the ages of 5 to 20. Up there practicing. It's unbelievable to watch them. In fact, at times I just say they're starting them too early, but I'm not giving that opinion. I mean, there's little lads this size and they dribble the ball around you like it's no problem. It's amazing what has happened to soccer in America.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we've got USA against Australia coming up later on for the Irish audience, and the reaction over in the weekend in America. There'll be all sorts of different voices reacting to what happens, and there'll be one from Knockbridge contributing to that debate.
That's right, yeah, I know, and it's amazing, my Knockbridge accent. People say, how come you don't lose it? And I just say, yeah, maybe next week. But like, I do call people sometime on the phone, and I have a brother, Colin, and they say, yeah, Colin, what's up? And I said, it's not Colin, it's Tommy. Yeah. My accent is still the same as my brother's.
Yeah, it's held strong. Well, look, thanks for letting me into your home. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for telling my story.
Not at all. Enjoy the rest of your World Cup.
Thank you.
So yeah, that was Tommy, and I should say that is all part of a wider piece that we'll have in Saturday's Irish Independent. There's a lot more depth to his story, how he ended up being the Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade here, and some of the variety of characters he's encountered along the way, sharing a desk with Mario Kempes, all sorts of random tales. I was very well looked after there by his wife Trassa, a full Irish breakfast, Barry's tea waiting for me as I come in. It was a good day, and Tommy is a good story. I'll be back on the road. I'm going to Scotland in Boston, and then I'm off to Dallas for Argentina as I head towards Texas next week.